Welcome back to another episode of Lead Stronger Longer. I'm your host, Stefana Johnson, and this is all about inspiring you to lead your life personally, purposefully. That's at work, that's at home. And I think that this is so important that you remember that before you can lead anyone else, you better be leading yourself. So, in tonight's episode, we're going to talk about the law of process. So, process is something that oftentimes, if you are all about results, then the process can be really challenging. I know it is for me. There is no question. I have always struggled with the little details, the process. I want to get to the end result. And I think that that is something that is definitely something you can have innate in you, that you want to go to the results. You're really results oriented and you're driven towards the results. But I think it's also perpetuated in our culture. And if you've created that kind of culture in the organization you're leading, in your family that you're leading, in the community that you're leading, and you have, again, perpetuated that you've got to get the result, and you've left out this law of process or the process. And I'll bring up why I'm saying the law of process, because it is a law. And when I say law, it is not legal, it is the natural law of this universe that we co-create. So if you're all about getting the end result, then it's really easy to forget that there is a process to everything. So I remember the very first time I ever made a cake, and I was so focused on that outcome. And I remember decorating this cake and putting it this doing all the finishing touches. And then when we went to eat it, the process that I had gone through was missing some really key pieces. So the cake that was supposed to be this nice level was short and it tasted very salty. This is such a perfect analogy for what is happening in our world. We are seeing a world, and we can call it chaos. We can call it, ooh, it's really salty. There's a lot of disharmony. Bottom line is, we're not getting the results we want. And it does come down to that we have violated the laws of process. And those that do understand natural laws and how the universe works, how nature works, and we are part of nature, how we function, that if we skip key ingredients in any process, if we do not allow the process its time, we will not see the results. So we can look at this with creating life. We know that life, I know my son was like right at 40 weeks and he was cooked, right? He was done. He was completely through the process of building this amazing body. My body created this. And those that when they are not complete through the process of creating the body, there are things that are not functioning, not doing well. And it's not, and we only look at those little windows of, oh well, this is the body, this is the result that we've gotten. But we sometimes completely forget that there was a process, and we either skipped some sort of step in the process. And part of the process is preparing, right? Planning and preparing is part of a process. And so this is a really kind of exciting piece, because if you start asking the right question as a leader for yourself, a leader for your family, a leader for your business, a leader for an organization, a leader for a community, a leader for a culture, a company, country, even, we have to start looking at this. And we're at the stage now that there's kind of like a runaway freight train. And oftentimes the leaders that are the most um, kind of unknowingly overwhelmed are the ones that are on the runaway freight train and do not take the time to actually assess and look at and evaluate where they are in the process. Okay. I learned this the hard way. In the process of me building a brick and mortar studio, that process, I was doggedly going to make it happen. I was driving, and that was really connected to my early life in corporate, in a nonprofit sector, where it was like, get the result, get the result, get the result. It had, does get the result. And so the process, that is where it just went off the rails. And so then, as a leader, like, maybe you get the result, but you don't know how you got it. You cannot replicate it. And so this is where the law of process is so vital to look at. It is worth taking the time for yourself in a microcosm and in the macro look lens, and really taking the time to identify what are the process steps, and going through the process that you need to go through. And quite frankly, sometimes the process is uncomfortable. And so we want to run away from it. We want to, and I'll say run away from it because that's truly what we're doing. We're kind of rabbiting from it, or we're neglecting certain things that we need to do because we just want to get the results. So we push further, or we kind of, we neglect the resources. We are number one resource, especially in our business. As the leader, you are your number one resource. So if you neglect that, and that's part of the process to get you to where you want to get to, then it's a situation. So I want to give you one more example, and then I want to send off this week with a kind of a request that you look at areas where you might be feeling stuck, in personally or professionally. You might be feeling stuck at some point of not getting the results you want, and you may not have a full picture of the result or the process. And I just had this idea pop in my mind. You know how there's files in a system, or the drop down menus in, let's say you're creating a spreadsheet, and there's files that you can close, or even in your hard drive, let's say. And there are files that you can open up, and then it opens up these other files folders. And then within those file folders, you can open up more folders. And then within those file folders, there's actually documents in there, or images, or whatever else is in there. So that's a really great way to evaluate the process and to look at, meaning, if you open up this process. So let's say the result is you want to win an Olympic gold, and you've just started training on something that usually takes a decade, and your plan is to get to the Olympics in three years, in the next Olympics be 2028. Okay. Well, if you just have one file folder there that says get to the Olympics, and that's the end result, and you're doing all these other actions that are not in alignment with that end result, you're missing the process. So law of process will mean you will never get to that outcome, period. Okay. It's just not going to happen. Now, I'm giving that as a big example because I'm working with someone right now who is actually on this trajectory, and the process for them looks like multiple folders that we have to open up and go into the process of each area of their professional and personal life, because it is so significant. And this goes with most leaders, but folks that are really like at like top 1% on the planet, they cannot do what the average person is doing. They cannot be playing video games, or scrolling on all the waste time social medias, or binge watching Netflix. That would destroy their process. It would be counter to the process for the outcome of an Olympic athlete, or a best-selling author, or a leader who wants to get a valuation of their business for $1 billion and they're at 5 million today, right? So you have to start thinking about more than just, well, this is what I want and how am I going to get that? And there is part of, yes, we reverse engineer it, but there is a process. There is a process, and things, part of that process is an actual amount of time that things have to process, digest, assimilate. All of these words are within that basket of the law of process, because there are details that have to be looked at. And if we miss out on the details of where we're going and what we want to create as a leader, we get burned out. We get complacent. I see this time and time again, and we lose sight of our original goal, of our original dream, of our original outcome that we wanted. And we find ways to justify why it went wrong, or why we went off the rails, or why it's not happening, or why we gave up on it. And it is so, two things. It's sad for me and it's infuriating, because I have had clients who have catapulted in within a time frame, just completely transformed, physically, emotionally, mentally, completely transformed. And they went through a specific process and invested in working with someone who understands process and goal. And then once that was complete, they forgot that there is a process. And then there's a result that they don't like, and they're not happy about that. And so, but this is really key. And this is why I wanted to share this, because if you don't understand the law of process, it's so easy to get caught up and hung up on the fact that you're not hitting your targets. And there's a lot of blame that goes into that. We blame our teams, or we blame something outside of ourselves. But it could just be as simple as you're missing some key understandings, some key principles around what actually the process is. And that's, I have seen it just completely transform leadership in their own personal life as well as their company, just by understanding this one concept and law. And I'm going to bring it back to law, because here's the thing. We live in a time that it's easy to forget that there are fundamental principles that are inherent in this joint reality that we are co-creating. And there are those that I believe do know these natural laws, the law of rhythm, the law of the law of give and take, the law of compensation, and they are abusing them and keeping certain very simple fundamental laws hidden from the general population, or distracted, right? Everybody's distracted on to the next thing, or they're too sick to even study and to be able to think so that they can actually think with concepts like this. That when I'm in my 50s now. And so I remember my brain actually having to shift when I was learning a slide rule. And I remember the moment that my brain just started to understand how to use this slide rule. And that is what we have forgotten, is how to learn and how to actually let our brains process new understanding and new expansion of awareness. And we've just, and we are kind of doing it. We are doing it to ourselves. We are doing it to ourselves by constantly being on the next, Netflix. And look, I do too. I like my movies. I like to make my little popcorn and sit down and watch my movies as a nice little treat or break as well. I get it. But doing that is antithesis to the outcome. If I want to have my book published by January, right? If I want to have that book completely published and go through the steps, if I am not taking the right steps to process, I am not nourishing the steps along the process, the outcome's never going to happen. Never going to happen. And it doesn't matter how hard you push, it doesn't matter how hard you keep driving, you will not get the outcome you want. And it's going to come back down to that process. All right, that's all I've got for today. I will see you next week. Be sure you subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I go live. I've been going live and I've been doing some kind of impromptu consulting, I'll say, right? Using my intuitive skills and my 30 years of expertise in supporting clients to lead stronger, longer. It starts from the inside out, folks. And this is a key piece that we've forgotten. We want to point the fingers outside, and there is nothing more incorrect than that right there. It all starts with ourselves. I'm right there with you. Believe me, I've got the three fingers pointing back at me. Every day is a work in progress, and we move forward by celebrating each micro win. And then we take a look at what's one thing that we want to improve, and we move forward. All right, I hope this helps. I'll see you next time.